It is 1973. The entire country is about to get blindsided by an oil embargo that will reshape American automotive priorities for decades. Gas lines are forming. Engines are shrinking. Detroit is panicking. And right in the middle of this chaos, General Motors decides to bet millions of dollars on an engine that does not use pistons, does not use valves, and runs on a principle most American engineers thought was pure science fiction. They called it the rotary engine, and for a brief moment, General Motors was convinced it would power every single car they made by 1985. What happened instead was one of the strangest engineering dead ends in American automotive history, involving a Japanese licensing deal, a billion-dollar factory that never produced a single production engine, and performance testing so promising that General Motors' own engineers could not believe the prototype numbers were real. The rotary engine was not an American invention. It was German, conceived in the 1950s by Felix Wankel, a self-taught engineer who had spent years obsessing over a simpler alternative to the piston engine. Instead of pistons moving up and down in cylinders, Wankel's design used a triangular rotor spinning inside an oval chamber. One complete rotation of the rotor produced 3 power pulses. No valves, no camshafts, no connecting rods, just a rotor, a housing, and continuous combustion. The concept was elegant. Fewer moving parts meant lighter weight, smoother operation, and theoretically better reliability. When NSU, a small German manufacturer, demonstrated the first working Wankel engine in 1960, the automotive world lost its mind. Companies lined up to license the technology. Mazda bought in. Mercedes-Benz bought in. Rolls-Royce investigated it for aircraft use. And in 1970, General Motors signed a $50 million licensing agreement with NSU, the largest such deal in automotive history at that point. General Motors didn't just want to experiment. They wanted to replace the piston engine entirely. Ed Cole was running the show. He had been General Motors president since 1967, a genuine car guy who had championed the small-block Chevy V8 back in the 50s. Cole drove a rotary-powered Mazda RX-2 as his personal car and became genuinely obsessed with the technology. He believed rotaries could meet tightening emission standards more easily than piston engines because of their cleaner, more complete combustion. He believed they could be manufactured more cheaply because of the reduced parts count. Most importantly, he believed they were the future, and he committed General Motors' resources to making that future happen as fast as possible. By 1972, General Motors had rotary engines running in test mules across multiple divisions. Chevrolet was developing a 2-rotor for the Vega. Oldsmobile and Buick were working on larger versions. The engineering center in Warren, Michigan, had entire buildings dedicated to rotary development. Dynamometer cells ran 24 hours a day, logging endurance data. General Motors wasn't tiptoeing into this. They were sprinting. The performance numbers coming out of early testing were genuinely impressive. A 2-rotor engine displacing the equivalent of 1.8 liters was producing 180 horsepower in naturally aspirated form, matching or beating 4-cylinder piston engines that were significantly larger. The power delivery was smooth, almost turbine-like, with usable torque across the entire rev range. Prototype Vega cars equipped with rotaries were hitting 60 miles per hour in under 9 seconds, quicker than anything else in the compact class. But there were problems. At first, the problems were small, the kind engineers assumed they could solve with more development time. Fuel consumption was higher than equivalent piston engines because of the rotary's elongated combustion chamber shape. Apex seals, the small metal strips that rode along the edges of the triangular rotor to maintain compression, were wearing out faster than expected. And there was an oil consumption issue that was significant. General Motors engineers attacked each problem methodically. They experimented with different seal materials, trying carbon, cast iron, and various alloys. They modified the combustion chamber profile to improve fuel atomization. They adjusted oil injection rates and tested different lubricant formulations. Progress was being made, but it was slow, incremental, and expensive. While General Motors engineers were grinding through development challenges, the business case was starting to shift underneath them. The 1973 oil crisis hit in October, and suddenly fuel economy was not just a nice feature. It was the feature. Buyers were abandoning V8 engines and demanding four-cylinder cars that could stretch a gallon of gas as far as physically possible. The Rotary's fuel consumption disadvantage, previously considered a minor trade-off for its performance and smoothness, became a serious liability. Then the apex seal problem got worse. Durability testing revealed that seals were failing well before expected service intervals. In some high-mileage tests, engines were losing compression entirely before 50,000 miles. Mazda had faced similar issues and spent years refining their seal designs and materials. General Motors was learning the same painful lessons, but they were learning them on an accelerated timeline, with corporate expectations breathing down their necks. The emissions situation became complicated in ways nobody had predicted. Yes, Rotaries burned cleaner during normal operation, but they also consumed oil by design, injecting small amounts directly into the combustion chamber for rotor lubrication. That oil burned along with the fuel, creating hydrocarbon emissions that were difficult to control. As federal emissions standards tightened through the mid-70s, the Rotary's theoretical advantage started disappearing. By 1974, the cracks in General Motors' Rotary program were becoming impossible to ignore. The Vega Rotary, which had been publicly announced and was supposed to launch for the 1975 model year, kept getting delayed. Engineers needed more time, more testing, more refinement. The production tooling sat waiting in a massive new facility General Motors had built specifically for rotary manufacturing, ready to stamp out housings and rotors at tremendous scale. Everything was in place except the engine itself. Management gave the engineers one more year. Fix the seal wear, reduce oil consumption.
Cooling oil starts to spray on the rotor.
Get emissions under control, or the program shuts down. That deadline came and went. The problems remained. In September 1974, General Motors made it official. The Rotary program was canceled. All of it. The Vega Rotary, the Monza Rotary, the Astre Rotary. Every variant that had been planned across multiple divisions disappeared overnight. The specialized tooling was mothballed. The engineers were reassigned. The testing facilities went quiet. GM wrote off the entire investment, estimated between $70 million and $100 million. It was written off, roughly $500 million in today's money, and it vanished into development costs for an engine that never reached a single customer. But something strange happened next. GM did not scrap the knowledge. They licensed the rotary technology they had developed to John Deere, who used it successfully in small industrial applications where fuel economy mattered less and durability could be managed through different service intervals. The basic rotary design worked. It simply did not work for the American passenger car market in the mid-70s. Mazda, meanwhile, kept going. They faced the same seal wear issues, the same oil consumption problems, the same emissions headaches. The difference was commitment. Mazda had bet their entire corporate future on the Rotary and could not afford to walk away. They refined the apex seals through dozens of iterations, eventually settling on a multi-piece design with specific spring tensions that dramatically improved durability. They developed thermal reactor systems to burn off excess hydrocarbons before they left the exhaust. They accepted the fuel consumption penalty and marketed the Rotary on smoothness and performance instead. The RX-7 launched in 1978 and became a genuine sports car icon, proving the Rotary could succeed if you built the entire vehicle around its strengths. instead of trying to shove it into an economy car and hoping buyers would not notice the trade-offs. GM's mistake wasn't technical. Their engineers were solving the same problems Mazda's engineers were solving. The mistake was strategic. They tried to make the Rotary into something it wasn't, a high-volume economy car engine that could compete on fuel efficiency with conventional piston designs. The Rotary's advantages were elsewhere, in power density, in smoothness, in compactness. Those strengths mattered in sports cars and premium applications where buyers valued performance over maximum fuel economy. GM aimed the technology at the wrong target. There is a deeper irony in the timeline. Just as GM killed their Rotary program in 1974, they were simultaneously developing what would become the Iron Duke four-cylinder engine, a crude, unrefined, massively overbuilt piston engine that shook like a paint mixer and sounded like a diesel. That engine went into millions of Vegas, Citations, and Fieros through the 1980s. It was everything the Rotary wasn't: rough, inefficient, and outdated. But it was cheap to build, easy to service, and familiar to every mechanic in America. It fit the system. The Rotary did not. The few running GM Rotary prototypes that still exist are kept in private collections and occasionally shown at engineering retrospectives. Journalists who have driven them report the same thing. They are smooth, responsive, and genuinely pleasant to drive. The engine feels more refined than the Vega's chassis deserves. In an alternate timeline where GM launched the Rotary a few years earlier, before the oil crisis reshaped buyer priorities, or positioned it in a premium application instead of an economy car, the outcome might have been different. But history does not run on might-have-beens. It runs on decisions made under pressure with incomplete information. GM's leadership looked at rising development costs, tightening emissions regulations, a fuel-conscious market, and an engine that still was not ready, and they made the call that seemed rational at the time. The Rotary's failure at GM did not stop the company from experimenting with unconventional engines. They later developed two-stroke diesels, attempted aluminum block FEV8 engines, and invested heavily in early hybrid technology. Some succeeded, most did not. That is the nature of engineering development at scale. You try 10 things, hoping 3 work well enough to justify the 7 that do not. What the Rotary proved was something GM already knew, but kept forgetting. American car buyers in the 1970s did not want advanced technology for its own sake. They wanted reliability, familiarity, and value. The Rotary offered none of those things in a package they were willing to pay for. Mazda succeeded with it because they built a cult following around the engine's unique character. GM tried to make it invisible, just another engine option in the catalog. One approach worked. The other did not. Somewhere in a warehouse, there is probably still tooling designed to mass-produce Rotary housings at a rate of thousands per day. It was used exactly 0 times for its intended purpose. That is the physical artifact of GM's Rotary ambition. Millions of dollars in specialized equipment were rendered obsolete before they ever ran production parts. The engineers who worked on the program moved on. Some went to other divisions within GM. Others left for competitors or suppliers, carrying with them expertise in an engine design that American manufacturers would never seriously attempt again. That knowledge did not disappear. It just stopped being relevant to the problems Detroit was trying to solve. The cancellation in 1974 closed the book on American Rotary development. No domestic manufacturer has touched the technology since. Mazda kept the flame alive for decades, eventually discontinuing their last Rotary-powered car, the RX-8, in 2012, then reviving it in hybrid form for the 2023 MX-30. The Rotary remains what it always was: brilliant in theory, challenging in execution, and just different enough from conventional engines that most manufacturers decided the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. General Motors' Rotary program stands as a monument to what happens when brilliant engineering meets terrible timing. They built the factories, trained the workforce, solved most of the technical problems, and then walked away from it all because the market had moved underneath them. That's not failure. That's just automotive development. You swing hard, you miss sometimes, and the ones who survive are the ones who can afford to take the hit and move on to the next idea. The Rotary didn't kill General Motors. It just cost them $100 million, and it taught them that revolutionary technology needs more than good engineering to succeed. It needs the right car, the right market, and the right moment. General Motors had 1 out of 3. Mazda somehow managed all 3, at least for a while. That difference is why one company made Rotary history, and the other company made Rotary prototypes.